Hey, I want to welcome those at LifeSpring. Would you say hello to your church family that is right here watching us right now? Come on, a little louder right now. Yeah. We're really excited about what's going on with you guys, and the financial piece and the numbers are growing, and it's exciting what's happening. If you're not aware of this, we have a satellite campus that is south of Sanford, north of Spring Lake, and we're very excited about what God's doing at that campus. And if you would like to be a part of a church plant that is reaching the community, then let us know you want to know more about LifeSprings, and we'll try to get you hooked up there. That's pretty exciting what's going on. We're starting a brand new series this week called Him and Her. Okay, and it's not just about marriage, but yet we are talking about it. So if you don't know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, I want you to know you're welcome. You're a part of these services, and I definitely think you're going to be able to get a lot out of this one, whether you believe the Bible or not. A lot of times we preach a lot of series where might challenge your faith, stretch your faith. I don't think it's going to be that way. I think, in fact, research would probably support this. And the cool thing about research, when you find a truth in the world, then it's in the Bible. It's God's truth. All truth is God's truth. He's the CEO. He's the owner. He copyrighted all truth. And so you'll find the origins of it in Scriptures. And so you just sit back. You don't have to believe like us. You don't have to believe in the Easter story. You don't have to believe in Christmas. You don't have to believe in Jesus to be able to get this. But I do believe that even in a subject that is not as drenched as, when we preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, the message of the cross, even when we preach truths like this, God will reveal Himself to you. So you just listen for Him and be prepared to say yes whenever He does. We're gonna start the series, and it's going to be on relationships. Now, I need to give a disclaimer up front. I realize, and I'm very anxious to see what's going to happen. I posted on Facebook, that I was going to tell you what women want, and I'm very anxious to see what kind of replies I get, and what I'm scared to look at it, but I'm almost afraid to look at what people's going to get. Now, I need to give a disclaimer. I want you to understand, I'm not telling you from my perspective, because I will be honest with you, I'm just not that wise. And if my wife was in this service, she would give the loud amen. I'm just saying. And I'm not going to stand on this stage and act like I've got all the marriage stuff figured out, and I've got all the relational genius. I'm a relational genius and I got it figured out. I'm just going to tell you something. Me and my wife, one of our biggest conflicts is where we're going to eat. Come on, somebody. Amen, right? Y'all know what I'm saying, right? And so I'm like you. She's like, where you want to eat? I don't care. Where you want to eat? I don't care. Where you want to eat? We're going to eat at peas, just peas. We're going to eat peas. I don't like peas. Well, why are you asking me where I want to eat? It's a problem, but I'm all right. I'm good. All right. I'm just like you, okay? I'm just like you. So I'm not trying to act like I got all this together. By no means. We're just trying to help, and we're going to try to help each other. And that's why we're doing the Art of Marriage seminar. I hope you can. It's $35 per couple, and that's not to us. That's for the people who we're getting the material from. So don't feel like that the church is raking any cash on that. We do things free, but that's the cost of the material. And so it's just to get you a workbook is what it is, so you and your spouse can be able to go through that. Now, we're going to do this series called Him and Her, and it's almost like two series in one. The first 2 weeks we're going to talk to mainly guys about women, okay? And then the last 2 weeks we're going to talk to women about guys. And so if you're single, hey, I'm telling you, this is your time, baby. You need to take notes. You need to be on the front row, all right? Some of this stuff that I'm going to be teaching you, I wish I had known when I got married. Because come on, all the married people, if this is true, you say amen, that you went into it thinking you knew everything and found out you didn't. Yeah, that's what I thought, right? So you think it's different and all this kind of stuff, and I wish you would get this. If you could get this, it would change your whole future as you date and as you relate. And actually, to be honest with you, if you're having trouble to attract someone of the opposite sex, actually, single people, this could actually make you more attractive if you will get that. Now, somebody's like, I'm hooked in now. You know what I'm saying? Let me write that down, right? So here we go. We're going to be talking about it. Let me get you going with a Sailing Chapel LifeSpring Church social media moment. And if you look inside of your program, or in church world we call them bulletins, if you look inside of your program or your bulletin, and you can follow along, fill in the blanks and stuff, and it's going to be on the screen as well, and then you can post this at whatever time you want to. Ready? Here we go. My behavior should be more influenced by God's commands than my circumstances or feelings. Amen. My behavior should be more influenced by God's commands, what He says, rather than what I feel like in the moment and what she does and what he does and what my kids do. And in fact, I've had a bad hair day, which I've had a lot of those last few years. But whatever it is, then it is what I'm going through. I should be listening more to God. So we're going to talk about the fact, we're going to talk about the subject. The way I've titled this message is What Women Want. Can I just go ahead and tell you that up front? What do women want? Let me just tell you, I don't have a clue. That was just a clever title to get people to come to church. I don't have a clue. I don't know what women want. I'm still trying to figure out my wife. But I do know what the scriptures say women want, okay? And so I'm going to talk to you about what scriptures say. Luckily, thankfully, we're blessed that we're not left to guess. From 1 Peter, he gives us what women want, and he gives us two things. We're going to look at one verse, and we're going to look at one thing he says women want this week, and then next week we're going to look at the other thing in that same verse that, according to 1 Peter, that's writing who is inspired by God, who created women, and this is what God says the way he wired them up, what they want. And so we're going to look at that. Here's the verse. Ready? Here it is. And you got it on your outline, but it's later on in the sermon, but I'm just going to read it right now. We're going to come back and talk about it, but it's on the screen. Just kind of think about it, and we're going to two weeks of this. Ready? You husbands, in the same way, say in the same way. In the same way, we're going to come back and talk about that. Live with your wives in an understanding way, as with someone weaker. Now, some of you's already got mad. I'm getting up and leaving. Just hang with me, all right? So someone weaker, since she is a woman, and show her honor as a fellow heir of the grace of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered. So this week we're going to talk right up to the semicolon, next week after the semicolon. Now, when you read a verse like that, whether it's talking about you wives submit to your husbands, or are you husbands in the same way, here's the deal. Have you noticed that when you read a verse like that, when it talks about marriage, immediately defense mechanisms go up? Have you noticed that? Immediately, and it's for all of us. It's like, well, I'm sure they don't understand my context. And it's true for men and for women. Immediately when we hear something like that, we want to, when somebody tells us how to treat our spouse, immediately we want to disqualify what they said, because our situation is different and it kind of trumps it. And so we kind of feel like that it don't really apply to us, because if they knew our situation, it's like this. Here's what we like to say. I know what the Bible says about wives and how they're supposed to submit. I know what the Bible says about husbands and how they're supposed to treat their wives, but I can't sync that up with my home situation, because I married Satan's child. And if he would, then I would. If she would, then I would. And immediately we get to feeling like that this is a problem. Because you know what I've noticed? Come on, somebody. Y'all don't leave me out here by myself on this one. What I've noticed is that the emotion when it comes to family is deeper than in any other arena. Is that true? I'm telling you, whenever I got married, a whole new category of joy came into my heart. But it also came a whole new category for me to get hurt on a level like I've never had before. When I had kids, buddy, I'm telling you, I didn't know I could love like that. When I had one child, I thought, man, I was scared to have the second one, because I was scared I wouldn't love the second one like I loved the first one. But I didn't realize that every time you have a kid, it's like a whole new depth of love. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? I'm telling you, the joy whenever things are good at home between Melissa and I, the joy is better than anything I could imagine. Woo! I love me some Melissa. But when things are bad, ain't nothing right in my life. Y'all know what I'm saying, right? You come give me $1,000, I get mad at you that you didn't give me $2,000. You know what I mean? Just because it ain't right. You know, it is not an emotionally neutral home. And I'm telling you, there's nothing that can push the retaliation. And it ain't got. I'm talking about it with marriage, single people. I'm gonna be using marriage during this as the thing. But I'm telling you, you could apply this with your mom. You could apply this with your dad. I mean, family is not emotionally neutral, right? Nobody, like your siblings, can push your retaliation buttons. Come on, right? Nobody can push your revenge buttons like your family, like your wife or your brothers or sisters or whoever. Nobody can push your reaction buttons, your rejection buttons. I mean, it is tough. When it comes to family, there is no such thing as a neutral situations. And in fact, before I move on, situations where you would normally respond one way, when they happen inside of your family, it's like something flips. Y'all know what I'm saying, right? Have you noticed that normal social skills that you apply every day when you're outside your home somehow get turned off inside your home? Have you noticed that? You will say things and act in ways that you would never say and act in other places. That's why you see kids, sometimes teens, talk to their parents in ways they would never disrespect another adult. You ever seen that? I mean, don't look at them, but I mean, you know people like that, right? You've seen husbands talk to their wives in ways they would never talk to another woman. Or wives talk to their husbands and about their husbands in a way they would never talk about anybody else. It is just, I mean, I'm telling you, it is not neutral. When we come to our family, it's like all social skills, all of our people skills just go out the window if we're not careful. When it comes to family, it is so easy to lose perspective. Anybody with me? If so, say amen, y'all. And so for that reason, that's the reason Peter knew that. So when he made that statement, he made this one little phrase, in the same way. Say that with me. In the same way. Now, when you're reading Scripture and anytime you see a phrase like that, when it says therefore or in the same way or just as, let me tell you what that means. What that means is he's referring back to something he said before. When he says that, it means there is a specialized context for what he just said to husbands. There is a specialized context for what he said, and you can't understand what he's saying really unless you understand what he just said. And so when you read something like that, you need to reverse, rewind, back up, and go see what he said, because what he said impacts what he's about to say. Anybody with me? So say amen, right? So you understand that. So that's what he did. Now, here's the context. The context is Peter's been talking about, he's been discussing Christian lifestyle and the response to the law, and he's saying that, hey, you need to obey the law in your society, not because the law is always right, but you need to, this is what he says earlier. I don't have time to read all that, but he says you need to obey the law, not because the law is always right and correct, but you need to obey the law because, for the Lord's sake. And he just draws us in this broader context, and he says your obedience to the laws of the land is not so much about the laws of the land and Democrat and Republican and all that. It's about you're a Christian. Because you're a Christian, there's a certain conduct. And then he goes on and he says, hey, if you're a slave, you obey your master. Why? Because your master's good and you like being a slave? No, it has nothing to do with that. Of course you'd rather not be a slave. Of course, some of your masters are bad, but you obey them. Why? Because you're a Christian. And he gives this broader context, and he says, listen, you do what's right, not because it's nice and comfortable, but because it's right. And in that context, that's where he says, and then he gives this line drive right down the middle. Y'all remember playing baseball? And some of you never played. And all of a sudden somebody hits a line drive and it's coming right for your head. You better catch it or it's going to knock you out, right? Y'all with me? This is the way this passage is right here. Ready? And this is on your outline. 1 Peter 2. Here's the context that for that husband's passage. Ready? Here's the context. But how is it to your credit if you receive a beating for doing wrong and endure it? But if you suffer for doing good and you endure it, this is commendable before God. In other words, he says, hey, if you deserve to be treated bad and you're treated bad, so what? You deserve to be treated bad. But if you get treated bad and you don't deserve it, if you suffer unjustly, if you're mistreated and you really are innocent, but yet you're mistreated, then God's taking notice. God gets excited about that. And so here's the context. This is the context of it. Verse 21. To this you were called. I bet nobody told you that when you decided to accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, did they? That you were called to suffer unjustly. Don't that make you excited? Everybody ready to sign up to be a Christian? That's part of the Christian's job description. That part of what we are to do is to suffer unjustly. This is already shedding a whole lot of light on your family, isn't it? So now you're like, now, you know, it makes perfect sense. You can just go home and say, I know now why all of y'all are idiots. You're idiots because it's part of my calling. God has placed you in my life to let me suffer. So let's just high five each other. You know, high five. You're here so that I can get treated bad. Thank you for fulfilling God's plan for my life right there, right? He says, hey, you're called to suffer unjustly. This is, you're fulfilling God's call in your life. He says, this is the Christian. You say, I can't believe that. Well, it's right there. To this you were called because Christ suffered for you, leaving you what? an example that you should follow in his steps. In other words, Jesus left us an example. Meaning that when you suffer unjustly, you shouldn't be going, Lord, what's wrong? Aren't you paying attention? Don't you see what I'm going through? Don't you see who I married? Don't you see how bad she is? Don't you see how bad he is? Don't you see? And God says, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Why are you saying that you shouldn't suffer? My son suffered. Why would you think you shouldn't suffer? This is part of the deal. This is part of what it is. And then he quotes right here in verse 22, Isaiah 53, verse 9. He committed no sin. Talking about Jesus. And no deceit was found in his mouth. Verse 23. When they hurled their insults at him, he didn't retaliate. Is that the way you're handling your home situation? When they hurl their insults at you, do you retaliate? When your mom, you say, well, you don't know my mom's abusive with her words. Well, he said, you got a role model right here. When they hurled insults, he didn't retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. He didn't be like, if y'all do this to me, I'm going to do this to you. I'm going to leave. You can count on it. I'm going to walk out and I'm not going to give you my paycheck. And there'll be no more sex and there'll be no whatever threats you're using. He didn't threaten. When he suffered, he wasn't a threat. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judged justly. Now, let's unpack that. Ready? It goes in your blank. Let me give you three things right here from that passage. Three characteristics of our model according to that passage. Number one, Jesus did not retaliate. This is your model, okay? So whenever we read this thing about in the same way, I'm just giving you the context of what Peter's saying. In the same way, Jesus did not retaliate. Number two, Jesus did not threaten. There was no ultimatums. There was no threaten. There was none of that kind of stuff. Number three, Jesus trusted God. Jesus, instead of retaliating, he says, God, I'm just going to let you handle it. My responsibility is simply to do what you told me to do, and I just refuse to take the responsibility for the burden to get back. I trust you. I trust you. I'm not going to take responsibility to get even. That's the burden I don't want to have. I'm not going to worry. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life worrying about how I'm going to get them back and how I'm going to even the score. I'll let you do that. I'm just going to obey what you said. Now, that's the context. He says women are to treat their husbands, and I skip in this part, by the way, women. We're not looking at that verse for you, but right before this thing about men, he says women, in that context, he tells women to submit and stuff, and that's the same context. And he said, and husbands, here's how you treat your wives in that same context. And so Peter says, hey, how many of you are Christians? If you call yourself a Christian, that you're going to go to heaven when you die, and you're here to please God, he says, listen, number one, I want you to understand something. You're called to suffer. That's just part of it. So don't be whining and complaining and think it's all about you. Number two, I want you to understand something. You got an example who you're going to follow whenever you do suffer. His name is Jesus. And here's what I'm telling you. Number three, I want you to follow his example. Now, you see what he's done before he ever gets to the details about how our marriage, how we're to treat each other and what a woman wants and all that stuff. He eliminates all of our excuses. And so I just thought it would be kind of cool to start right here for men and for women, because this is the same context for men and for women, that we really have no excuse. Because I know some of you are not going to listen to anything I say because you're thinking, he don't understand my wife, he don't understand my husband, he don't understand our situation, he don't understand my marriage, he don't understand her parents, he don't understand. I understand, but I understand what Peter said, and Peter says you don't have any excuse. Because, see, we like to say, but he, quit looking at me, God, look at her. Quit looking at me, look at him, right? And Peter says, I want you to understand something. This is not about any of that. He says, I want you to understand you have no excuse, because your example, whenever he was verbally abused, he did not verbally abuse back. Whenever he was done wrong, he did not do wrong back. Whenever he suffered, he did not try to revenge. He just kept entrusting himself to God and said, God, I'm going to trust you to handle this. God, I'm just going to trust you to handle this because you are bigger. You're the one who judges rightly, and I'm going to trust him. Now, how many of you understand what I'm saying so far? Hold your hand up good and high. So what he's done is he's eliminated all excuses. There's no back door on this one, okay? We have to respond to that. Now, with that being said, let's jump into what he said, and let's unpack that so that I can make sure I rock your world by telling you what women want, okay? Here it is. We're going to tell you. Right here it is. So, out of that context, you don't have any excuse. We're going to follow Jesus. You don't get a pass no matter what she did, what he did. You don't get it. Here it is. Ready? Here's the context. Peter draws our attention to the family. 1 Peter 3:7. You husbands, in the same way, say it, In the same way, ready? In the same way, a little louder, ready? Are those at Life Springs too? 1, 2, 3. In the same way, live with your wives in an what? Understanding way, as with someone weaker. Now, I'm not going to have you say someone weaker because I know that's hard. All right, just hang on with me. But that's what we're talking about in this week. Next week, we'll talk about the rest of it. Since she's a woman. Now, here's the part we're going to talk about next week. And show her honor. Somebody's like, I'm coming back for that. As a fellow heir of the grace of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered. Okay, so here's today's lesson. Ready? Let me just sum it up. We're going to talk about it as we go through. Men should seek to understand, say understand their wives. Now, in the Greek, what that says, it says right here in the New American Standard, it said, live with your wives in an understanding way. In the Greek, it says, live with your wives according to knowledge. In other words, that means that we are to become students of our wives. It means that you are to become a student and understand and see life from her perspective. That you're going to see life from the way she says. That my job is to become such a good student that I see cooking, cleaning, chores, kids, that I can see those things from her side of things and I can argue her case. So that before I make a decision, before I react to a situation, before I make a decision that impacts her, before I respond to things that are going on, that I have understood my wife, my responsibility, my calling from God is to understand her and see life from her perspective. Now, I'm already done. Can anybody say amen? Right? You're already, guys, is that, I mean, see, I can see what you're thinking right now. Flags are going up and you're like, I try, but you can't understand her. And I say, honey, just tell me, just tell me what's going on. And the only thing she does, Dale, is she just cries and says, you don't understand. I'm like, I know I don't understand, And she goes in a room and shuts the door and won't talk about it, I know. But don't stop the process, okay? He says you can't stop the process because your job, man, as called by God, is to understand and live with your wife in an understanding way. And so my full-time job is to see kids, to see cooking, to see laundry, to see all the things my wife's involved in, to see her volunteering, the PTA, the homework, to see life from her perspective. In other words, you know what? You remember like biology? Bio means life and ology means the study of, right? And astrology is the study of the stars. Stuff. My wife's name's Melissa. I am supposed to be a Melissaologist. That's what I am. I'm a Melissaologist. That the rest of my life is to study her and to know why she feels the way she feels about things. And see, that's very difficult because I've got to reach behind her words and reach into what's driving those words. That is very difficult with anybody. And let me just say this, ladies, in case you didn't know this. We don't do that naturally, right? Come on, men, say amen, all right? Well, that's not easy for us. And I'm just going to be honest. We don't want to do that either. Don't say amen, men, because then you'll be in trouble. I'll be the only one in trouble if you don't say nothing, okay? We really don't want to know what you feel. I mean, honest, we kind of do, but we kind of don't because it's not natural for us. Because you know why? It's too difficult. It's too hard. And so that's the reason Peter says, hey, I know you're not going to want to do this, so I'm telling you, men, live with your wives in an understanding way. And you know what's interesting? He don't tell the women to live with their husbands in an understanding way. And yet y'all seem to understand us better than we understand ourselves, Because you're just good like that, It's like he didn't have to tell women, hey, women, try to understand your husbands because you already kind of do, all right? In fact, he just told y'all to submit. So evidently that must be a weak area for you. But we ain't got time to get into that tonight. All right, here you go. But he just said that he's talking about the weak areas. And so he says, women, you need to submit. And he talks about submission. But he says to the men, hey, you know what part of your problem is you don't have to understand because you don't want to understand. You just want to do it, make decisions and figure it out. Let her like it or lump it, baby. This is the way it's going to be right here, right? And he says, that's not the way. This is difficult. And and because it's difficult, because it's not in us to want to do it, we've got to be intentional, guys. We got to be intentional about it. Because if we're not intentional, we're just not going to do it. The temptation is that every time she talks, We're going to listen to what she says, take all that data in, evaluate that data from our maleness, and then we're going to give her a response on how to fix that problem, right? Or how to handle it, right? And what we're going to do is, here's what you're going to be tempted to do, guys. And you're going to be tempted to say, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. Let me tell you why you shouldn't feel that way. Because I took, and I heard what you said, and I just ran it through my filter, and I don't feel that way. And because I don't feel that way, you shouldn't feel that way. All right, let's move on. What's for dinner? Right? That's our temptation. And he says, listen, guys, because that's going to be your temptation, listen, because see, we don't naturally, come on, men, we don't naturally connect the events with the emotion, right? Now, you don't have to say, man, I know you're scared, so that's all right. But we don't understand why she reacts the way she does about things, right? Again, don't say nothing. I got to quit asking you to say right? But I'm going to get you in trouble. But we don't understand. It's like, I don't know why she's crying about that. I don't know why she's mad about that. I don't know. Because the event and the emotion, it just somehow, for most of us guys, and I'm generally talking, sometimes women are more like men in this area, and sometimes men are more like women. But generally speaking, we're not all that hot at figuring out the emotion and the event, how you connected those two things. And so Peter says, because of that, guys, you just need to know that about yourself. That's going to be a weakness, partly because of the way God wired you up. We'll talk about later on. But because of that, you're going to have to be intentional to live with your wives in an understanding way. And let me just explain something before I move on. Whenever I took counseling in school, in college, and I'm not a counselor, so don't think I'm a counselor, but most people, a lot of you do, if you go to college, you take a counseling class. And one of the things they'll tell you in the counseling class is that if you ever do become a counselor, you need to be on guard, because what will happen a lot of times is a lady will go to a counseling session and she pours it out, and counselors are trained in what's called active listening, and so they're trained like to look behind the words and reach for the feeling, and they can pick out what's going on. And so this has happened a lot. What happens is, without ever intending to, a lady will emerge from a counseling session and she will have this heart drawn to this counselor and be like, I have met a man who understands what I feel. I'm talking about a man, not a woman. A man who understands me. This guy I've been living with for 20 years, he don't have a clue, but this guy for 20 minutes, he understands what never intentional. It's not even a looks thing. But all of a sudden there's this connection and there's draw. And so now listen, the moral of that story is like, some of you guys are like, that's why we ain't going to counseling right there. That's right. You heard the preacher, That's not the moral of that story, okay? Because you can go to counseling. I'm not saying everybody counsel. You're not going to have an affair to do that. It could probably be good, That man might be a translator for you to understand why her emotions are there. It's probably a good thing to go to counseling. But here's what I'm saying. If you could learn what he knows, it'd make your marriage better. Single guys, listen. If you can learn to listen to women and understand them and their feeling, you will be a babe magnet. Just letting you know. Just thought you just need to know that right now, because there's something about the way God wired women up that when she feels understood and validated and that somebody cares and they know that and you can connect and you get it, you can get it. There's something about that is attractive. There's something about that is a draw because of the way God wired them up. And so that's just the way, that's just the way. And see, you say, well, guys are the same way. Not really, because we don't even want to tell you how we feel, because we don't even know how we feel most of the time, right? We don't care if you understand us, because we don't understand us, and we're cool with not understanding nothing. We're very happy about that, okay? We never try to analyze ourselves very much, you understand? We're happy. Just give us the remote, you understand? I mean, it really is just that simple, okay? So anyway, here we go. Ready? So, first thing, ready? Guys, we have to men should seek to understand their wives, ready? Since men are the pace setters, goes in your blank, in the home. And here's what he said. He says that as with someone weaker. Now, women get really excited about that passage, and not in a good way, because women want to react to it because they don't want to be called weaker. Now, let me try to explain this, and try to make it so that maybe it won't be quite as offensive. And by the way, if you're mad, don't get mad at Dale. I didn't write this. My name's not Peter, okay? So I'm just letting you know, all right? This is Peter. I'm just the mailman. Don't shoot the mailman. God wrote in the mail. So here it is. Ready? He says, as someone weaker. So let me try to explain it. Okay. First of all, he did not say somebody weak, okay? There's a difference, okay? It's a comparison word. He's not saying somebody who's weak. That's not what he said, but it's someone weaker. And you probably know what it means generally right off the top of your head, and this does mean that. It means that if you and your wife were to arm wrestle, generally speaking, and there are some exceptions, right? But generally speaking, the man's going to win. I mean, generally, most of the domestic violence calls that the police get are men beating women. There are some where women beat men, you know, Pastor Shane, but other than that... no, I'm just kidding. But other than that, there are some where women beat men. But typically it's the other way around, unfortunately, because it's just a physical strength thing. It's just there, and because of that fact, Peter calls them in. He says, "Listen, this is a principle. I teach my son this. He's the older, and my daughter is the younger. He's 11, she's 7. I say, listen, here's a principle in life, son. The stronger have to take care of the weaker physically. Now, understand." This is not a mental thing. This is not a mental thing. Everybody knows women are smarter, but it's a physical thing. And so you have to take care. Parents take care of kids, and older siblings take care of younger siblings, and husbands take care of wives. So part of what he's saying is, hey guys, you need to understand something. You are stronger, and you need to be setting the pace for your family. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like, you know, you ever gone jogging with somebody, like you go exercise and go jogging? Probably not, most of you. But anyway, some of us have. No, I'm just kidding. I hadn't either really very much. But I'm told that if two people are jogging, then somebody's got to be the pace setter. And the one who's in the best physical shape is the one who sets the pace. Because if the one who's in the best physical shape don't pay attention to the one who's not in as good a physical shape, he will kill the other person. Now, he wouldn't kill me because I'd just quit running. But, I mean, other people would try to keep up with him, right? They try to keep up with him. So the one who's stronger is the pace setter because they know how to push and they know how to do that. And here's what he's saying. He said, listen, guys, you need to be careful because you're the pace setter in the home. And you need to make sure you're setting a pace as not to kill everybody else that is there. But it means something else that's even a little bit deeper. And let me just kind of illustrate this. You may have one of these in your home. This is a thermometer. You ever seen one of these? You ever have? Nowadays they got the electrical ones, you know, to catch kids' temperature on their head and the ears and all. But this is the old school. How many of you remember the old school ones, right? You hold it under your tongue. Y'all remember that, right? And they're very delicate. They come in glass vials, usually glass cases, because they're very sensitive. And it's a glass thing here, and you got to be careful with it a little bit because it will break. I mean, it's very very sensitive tool. It's an amazing tool. This little tool right here, you stick it under your tongue or under your arm, or stick it wherever you want to stick it. But anyway, you can stick it in a lot of places, you know. And what it would do is it will tell the temperature. Y'all hang with me now, right? It will tell the temperature within a fraction of what it is. And it'll alert you of an infection that's going on. It'll alert you what's going on underneath the surface, the things you can't see that is going on inside of the body. And literally, it could be the trigger to save somebody's life. It's extremely delicate. It's to be protected. It is very, 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 very valuable in the settings. But let me tell you what you shouldn't do. If you get locked out of your house, you should never use a thermometer to pry the door open. You just need to write that down, okay? You don't use a thermometer to pry. And if you did, guess what's going to happen? If you try to use a thermometer to break the door, to open the door, it's going to break. And so you would not go back to the drugstore and say, piece of junk, y'all sold me that mess. I can't even get my door open with it. You would never do that. Why? Because that's not what it's made for, right? This is not made for that. It's protected. It's delicate. If you need something to get the door open with, then you get this, right? This is a pry bar, crowbar, wherever you're. This is something that this will get you in the door. Don't do this. But if you need something to tell you what's going on under the surface and something sensitive, then you want to use this, because if you put this under your tongue or your arm or wherever you're going to put it. Come on, somebody, right? It will not tell you your temperature. It will raise your temperature, okay? letting you know, because it's not made for this. This is not made to do this job, and this is not made to do this job. Now, see, this is it. Y'all understand the analogy, right? Now, which one's better? Well, it depends on what we're doing, right? In some situations, I don't even want you to give me this because I need this. But in other situations, don't even give me this because I need this, right? It depends on what we're doing. And so that's why we probably have both of them in the home. Now, the same thing's true inside of your marriage. You see, here's the deal. Ladies, because of the way God wired you up, you're kind of like this. You have like a sixth sense. Can anybody say amen? Sixth sense. Is that right? Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Women's intuition. And you know things, and you can feel things, and you can sense things. I'm telling you, my wife, I don't know how many times we have left meetings at this church, and she said, you need to call so-and-so. Why? Because they were trying to tell you something tonight, and you just blew them off. I didn't think they were trying to tell me nothing. Maybe I think you're wrong. I'm telling you, you blew them off. Guess what? She was right. I'd call them. I say, look, I'm sorry. I know you were busy. You were distracted. I'm like, come on, just be with me one time for somebody, right? Just be with me one time. But see, yeah, because I didn't see it. I just didn't sense it. I didn't know it, right? There's so many times she'd say, listen, you need to go talk to the kids about this, that, and the other. The other day we had a situation came up at the house, and I was something I needed to be at, and I thought I needed to be at the church thing. She thought I needed to be with my daughter on it, and we had a little disagreement. Come to find out, she's right. She's the thermometer, right? But there's times we need crowbars at our house. That's me, baby. Come on. I'm there, you know. I'm ready because it's there. See, this is the reason I'm teaching my son right now. And I know this drives some of you crazy. I do a lot of fat jokes. Let me tell you why I do a lot of fat jokes. Is because I grew up in a family, we were the Fuller family. We were fat, okay? I'm just telling you. So we knew how to crack on each other. Me and my dad, we are like two stand-up comedians on fat jokes. We love fat jokes. We've done fat jokes all my life since the time I was little. Now, see, when I do that, even right now, some of you ladies are so uncomfortable, and you write notes on your blue card, please don't put yourself down. You need to higher self-esteem, and you need to what that. And the guys are coming out, that was good. You know, let me tell you one right here. You know, because see, this the way we're wired up. And see, that's the thing. But let me tell you what we never did. Never one time did I ever do a fat joke with my mom or my sister. Nope, I ain't doing that. They ain't doing that. They ain't fat. You know what I'm saying? They ain't fat. We ain't doing that, right? Well, see, I'm teaching my son that. My son likes fat jokes now. So he likes doing fat jokes with me, and I do fat jokes with him. So he decided to bust them out on his mama. I said, you better, easy, boy. I'm telling you right now. Keep talking like that, your lips going to swell up on you, right? And the man said he was joking with his wife like that. She said, you say that to me again, you won't see me again for 3 weeks. I said, what happened? He said, you're right. He said, that 3 weeks, the swelling went down just in that left eye. I could see her out of my left eye a little bit after 3 weeks. That's what's going to happen. You keep telling him fat because you don't do that now. Well, with me and him, it's fine. We love it. It's good. You say, well, you're going to damage your self-esteem. Nah, that's the way guys think. You see, whenever I come up to guys, like I come up to Pastor Micah, and I'll be like, hey, man, you married out of your league. Why did a pretty girl like that marry an ugly guy like you? And he's like, yeah, I know. You know, because it feels good, right? You know, but now you let me come up to one of you and say, girl, how did an ugly girl like you get a guy like that? It ain't working, right? It ain't working. It just ain't working. Because the bottom line, see, it's different. And so here's what, I got to move on. I'll be here all night telling this stuff. Here's what he's saying. What he's saying is, listen, because of the way God has wired you up, I'm trying to find where I'm supposed to be at right now. It sets you up, ladies, for a particular kind of weakness. And you already know that, don't you? You already know that. See, guys, we're kind of like, remember those things that, you know, like, I don't even know what you call them, but like they had this thing stick up in the ball and the guys would hit it and like a clown or something, it'd go and pop back up, right? You know, and that's where we are, guys. We get mad at each other. We blow up. We blow off some steam, then we shake hands. Some of my best friends, and some of you guys don't talk about, right? One of my best friends, we met at 6 years old because we were fighting. I was kicking his rear end. I mean, I'm telling you, I was mad as fire at him. He's one of my best friends today, because that's how guys are. Women usually, there's stories like that, and somebody might come tell me one and so. But generally speaking, ladies just feel things differently. And so, like, guys, we have these knockdown, drag-outs at home. We're like, all right, I'm sorry. We're good now, right? I said, I'm sorry. We're good. We're good? We're good. I'm sorry. I said, I'm sorry, right? We're good. We're good. And no, she's not good. I'm telling you, she won't be good for a little bit, okay? Because once the thermometer goes up, it has to come down, right? And you can't just shake it and make it come down immediately. It's going to be a little bit of time. And so here's what happens is that, ladies, you know this is, and you know this is true, is that you need time to do that. You're more delicate. And see, it sets you up for a little bit of a weakness. If in a workplace, and I ain't got time to get into this, but if y'all know it's true now, women can be tougher to manage than men sometimes, right? I mean, and one reason why is because it's a more delicate thing. And so, guys, here's the deal. Because of that, we're the pace setter. We're the glass vial to keep, when we're the plastic case to keep this glass vial, we're the protector. We're the pace setters, and that's what a woman wants. They want you to protect them. They want you to be sensitive to that. They don't want you to treat them like a crowbar. You can treat us like crowbars. We're crowbars, you know. We're tools. That's all we are. We're a tool, right? But you can't do that with ladies. So he says you got to live with your wife in an understanding way, and you got to be the pace setter inside of the home. So here we go. Ready? Let me just give you some ways to apply this, and then I'm gonna let you go. Ways to apply these truths. Number one, pray for understanding. Pray for understanding. Just every day, just say, God, help me to see the events of my wife's day through her eyes. Say, God, help me just walk a mile in her high heels. Okay, don't really do that. But anyway, you get what I'm saying? Just let me get in her shoes for a little bit. Understand the connection between her feelings and what just happened, because I'm not really connecting it. Because it's hard for us, guys. Here's number two. Ready? This helps me a lot. Argue her side. Become a defense attorney for her. And just mentally in your mind, like you got a problem in your marriage, argue her point of view. And act like you're her attorney and you are arguing her point of view. And before you respond or make any decisions for her, or before you react to anything she did, you argue her side until you get to a place you can connect the events and her emotion. That's just very difficult to do. And I'm telling you, what I've learned is that whenever you do that, even when I don't get it right, the fact I tried to get it right, okay, means a lot to my wife. The fact that I cared enough to try to understand. Because you know what? It's bad enough when you don't understand. What's even worse is when you don't even try to understand. So just try to understand. And I appreciate you ladies not saying amen real loud on stuff like that too, by the way. I just thought I'd tell you that. Number three, set a good example. Man, I could preach this. I don't have time. And I know it's difficult, but because we can line up, some of you can. I'm telling you, I have a lot of reasons to respect and honor my wife. But some of you can line up a lot of situations, a lot of examples on why it's hard and you shouldn't do that. But Peter erased all those excuses. So maybe what you need to do is set your kids down and say, hey, listen, I hadn't honored Mom very well. I hadn't respected her. I hadn't set a good pace in this home. And so right now I'm telling you guys, we're not doing this no more. It's a new day. Daddy has not really been a great role model. We're going to start treating Mom with a little more understanding. Even when I don't agree with her, we're going to still treat her with more understanding. And I'm going to set a different pace in this home. And let me just, hey, can I take just a second here? Some of you got like your first marriage fell apart and you got kids in that marriage, and now you got a new marriage and you got two families, and it's difficult for everybody. Can I tell you something? Regardless of how you feel about your ex, regardless of what kind of woman you think she is, I'm telling you, you're still a pace setter in their home. You said, no, I'm not. She's remarried. And I'm telling you, it's like your ghost still exists. When those kids come to you every other weekend and on summers, and they're, well, Mama, and you're like, yeah, your mom's this, your mom's that. I'm telling you, when you send them kids back, it's like hell for her. And it's going to get worse. Your relationship and the kid, you may be thinking you're helping your kids, but what you're doing is you're really creating a mess. You're creating a mess, and you can guarantee you she'll find a way to whatever on that, because I'm telling you, you're the pace setter. You're the pace setter. Hey, listen, some of you right now, you're at home when mom and dad, you're a teenager. I'm telling you, this applies to you. Live with your mom in an understanding way. Because you say, well, you don't understand. She's so abusive to me and she verbally abuses and da, da, da. I'm telling you, remember your example. He did not verbally abuse back when he was verbally abused. He did not retaliate. He didn't revenge. He just kept trusting himself to his Heavenly Father. And I'm telling you, the Bible says if you'll do that, you honor your father and mother, your days will be long on the earth. There's a blessing attached to that. Young men, man, this is the time to learn how to treat a wife and start treating your mama like this. Ladies, if you find a guy who treats you all wonderful, but he talks to his mama like dirt, beware. Beware. It's dangerous. This is the time to start learning all this. Now, how many of you understand what I'm saying? Next week, that's the first thing he says that women want. Is they want to be understood and know somebody cares, and they need somebody to help them set a pace here and not kill them and not run them in and be sensitive to that. Okay. Now next week I'm going to tell you about the second thing, honor, that he talks about. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to stand with me, please, and we're going to have closing prayer. We're going to do some worship, and it's time for you to make some commitments to God on whatever level you need to make the commitment. Would you right now just say, God, I hear you, and I'm asking you to help me in this area. Help me to set a pace that is better in my home. Help me to do this right, because I'm wanting a good marriage. How many of you guys would say, hey, I understood what you said, Dale, and I know how I can apply it? Hold your hand up good and high if that's you. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, good. Now use this, God. Use this for your glory. And let us start building better marriages, better homes, and better lives as we do that.